Oh my gosh, the last time I came out here, I don't know what I was thinking because it was snowing and I slipped and fell on the ice and it hurt so bad. I landed on my butt. I posted it on my Instagram just because I thought people would think it was funny. But man, this was not a place to come when it's snowing and there's ice on the ground. It was like slipping and sliding the whole time I was out here. Okay, sometimes the question gets brought up as how does dating and relationships work when you live in a car? And I did do a video a while ago about being in a long distance relationship, but just dating in general. I think that, well, in my experience, if I was going to meet someone, just go for coffee or something like that, I'm not going to tell them that, hey, by the way, I'm homeless. You know, that's not something. I would just kind of keep it casual, not really mention where I live, and that's just me. But when it comes to, like, if I was on a dating site, I'm obviously not going to put on a dating site that I'm homeless. But during the time I was living in my car, there's at least 2 relationships I had that were worth mentioning. One was a long distance relationship, and the other was not a long distance relationship. Now, I do want to say in the relationship I was in that was not long distance relationship, meaning I was living in Seattle, they lived in Seattle, they had their own home. They were aware of my situation. They knew I was living in a car, and they had a 2-story house where the basement level, they were planning to rent it out to someone. It wasn't fully, completely under construction, finished with construction yet, but that was their long-term goal. And so basically this person I was dating was saying, you know, instead of living in your car, why don't you move into the basement? Now, that would be great, but I also felt like this was someone I had just started dating. And, you know, it's kind of weird, like, dating someone and then living with them, and then what if the relationship doesn't work out, and then where am I going to live? Then I'm just renting. It's kind of like weird and awkward. I also felt like it was too early in the relationship to move in together. We needed to get to know each other longer. We needed to date longer. That was just my opinion. It didn't mean that I was not interested, and it didn't mean I was rejecting them. I just felt like maybe things were moving a little too fast, and I didn't want it to be, now I'm only dating this person because they're giving me a place to live. You know, I'm someone that's very independent. I'd rather make it on my own. Sure, it's great to have someone help you out and give you a leg up, but it was just something that I wasn't willing to, like, take that next leap in the relationship that early on in the relationship. And long story short on that relationship ended because they broke up with me and they felt that I was not committed enough to the relationship, and that's really too bad. I think things could have worked out if given time to grow, but they seemed very much like they wanted to rush into things, and I just wasn't there yet. We had just met, and I was still kind of new in town when it comes to me moving to Seattle. Now, I am going to talk a little bit about the long distance relationship I was in, that even though I did a video about it already, I want to talk a little bit about kind of like how we met, what was going on at the time. I had mentioned that I lived in Seattle, they lived in Portland. So at that point in time, I was actually renting a room from someone, but I was doing a lot of driving back and forth between Seattle and Portland. So me renting a room at someone's house was really like me having somewhere to keep my stuff. But if I wasn't at work, I was usually driving down to Portland to be with the person I was dating. Now, that person actually lived in an apartment. They were sharing an apartment with a friend, and then their friend ended up getting into a relationship and wanted to move in with their girlfriend, meaning he was now going to have the apartment all to himself. But he couldn't afford to have the apartment all to himself, and so he was kind of in the process of looking for a place to live. Now, like I said, you know, before with the other relationship, you know, when you first meet someone and then they start suggesting you move in together, it seems a little early on in the relationship. At least for me it does. So when they told me, you know, oh, my roommates moved out, now I can't afford the rent, I wasn't quick to say, like, hey, well, I'll move in and I'll help you pay the rent, because I was already established in a job and my life in Seattle, and I wasn't looking to move to Portland. And I also didn't really know where this relationship was going. I didn't know, like, we were still dating, we're in the first casual parts of the relationship, and I didn't know how serious the relationship was going to become, even though later on we did make plans to move in together. But at that point in time, they were kind of in this in-between stage of where they didn't know where they were going to live either. So they were still kind of like apartment hunting and looking around. And I wasn't really jumping in to help them make those decisions for them because I felt like that wasn't my place. So I still kind of went about my life. I went to my job every day. I was renting a room from someone and then spending a lot of my time down in Portland when it comes to the actual dating and hanging out and social aspects of the relationship. Now, it was, we did have an agreement that we were, seeing one-on-one, committed to each other. We weren't seeing other people. We at least had that agreement, but we certainly weren't at the stage of now we should take it to the next step and we should move in together, or we should get engaged, or we should get married. All of those are steps that happen down the road. And so right at the beginning is when we were kind of both in these in-between stages of where we didn't really have places of our own. We're kind of like couch surfing, renting rooms, trying to find somewhere to live, shopping around for apartments. But when it comes to, did this person know that I lived in my car? Okay, well, obviously their story is their story to tell, but I'll give you some highlights of their story because, like I mentioned, we both knew each other from Arizona, and then we went our separate ways, meaning I moved to Seattle, they eventually ended up in Portland. But back in Arizona, he had owned a business with some of his friends, so like a business partnership. And then some things happened where he just, was going through some things in his life and was really stressed out. And he decided to get out of the business and sell his share of the partnership off. And he took that time to be really like a self journey, to get to know himself better and to travel the country and do all the things he never got to do before. Because through that business, he did make a lot of money, but now he was looking to just take some time off for himself. Now, as he was basically traveling the country, camping, sleeping in his car, doing all that stuff, eventually he had a friend call and say, hey, we're really looking for someone. We have this job available in Portland. Would you be interested? And so, even though at that point in time he was still kind of traveling, he decided, sure, I'll take this job. I'll start a new life in Portland. And that's what he did. But because he had told me this whole background story of what he had done to like travel the country and explore and get to know himself better, because he was also like exploring religion and, going through some sort of, I guess, like, he used to drink a lot and he decided he wasn't going to drink anymore. And so he was really just trying to like change his life around. And so I think because he had told me all this, we had a lot in common, meaning I could relate to him, he could relate to me. And so as far as him knowing that I lived in my car, I kind of feel like it never really came up in conversation. So it's not like I kept it a secret or kept it from him, but I think there were certain conversations we would have where if he talked about living in a car in his life, I kind of was like, yeah, I totally understand that, I get that. But I never really went into too many details of what I had done in my life, that I had been living in my car, that I had traveled, several states away to start a new life as well. And so it was just kind of like, sometimes in relationships, yeah, they know you and you know them. But sometimes, I don't know, I feel like you don't necessarily have to tell someone your whole life story, right at the beginning. So they maybe didn't know all the details of me. And it's kind of like, well, how could you be in that truly of a deep relationship if they didn't know about your past or what your family's like or, things like that. I just feel like we just never got that deeply into things, and that our connection was through other things that we got along about, and we didn't have to have I guess like a shared trauma in order to get along. Not that there was trauma, but sometimes when I talk about my decision in my life to live in a car, it really did come out of a deep unhappiness that I was feeling at the time, and I was really looking to break out of that and find a new life, turn over a new leaf, all those things, a way to start fresh somewhere else. And so that's what I was doing. I was living my new life at that point, and I didn't really dwell on the past or what was going on in the past that kind of drove me to make such radical decisions, such as leaving a good paying job and living in my car. So that's why I just wanted to talk a little bit about what dating was like in a car, because it doesn't mean like just because you live in a car now you have to date other people that live in a car, because I certainly didn't. I still made friends, I still met up with people, but because things never were going to go much farther, I just didn't really explain my whole backstory to some people. And so, like I said, the one person I did get in a super serious relationship in that did want me to move in with them because they didn't want me living in a car. They thought it wasn't safe what I was doing. I just wasn't willing to give up my freedom at that point in time, because living in the car is kind of like freedom. You don't have a landlord telling you what to do because you're your own person. And I felt like moving in with someone you're dating and that they are kind of like your landlord, you still have to pay them rent. There's some kind of like weird, iffy things that could go on there that I just felt like not comfortable committing myself to. So this was just a short video. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment.